Hello, everybody. It's Raphael here from It's Time for You to Rewrite Your Life. And I have a special guest, and she has me. This is Nancy Jo Kincho. Hello, Nancy. Nancy, I'm not hearing you. I think you're muted.
Well, that's because I have a lot to say.
And here
Hi,
we are.
Raphael. Thank you so
Nancy
much.
has a lot to say from the East Coast in Florida, and I'm in Arizona, a little closer to the West Coast. So we're giving you our different perspectives. And that's why I'm really excited to talk to Nancy because we do have different perspectives. Now, my ex-corporate life working with ABC as a business analyst, account executive, different roles I played. I became what a lot of people call the corporate whistleblower. When I left ABC, I said I can no longer support this. This is wrong. This can't continue with the evolution of man. And they gave me a big check in one hand and a non-disclosure federal gag order in the other. Okay.
Wow.
So I got together with Nancy. Nancy is a data management expert. And Nancy, tell us about yourself, please.
Well, thank you again, Raphael, for inviting me because what I do is not something I really speak much about because as a professional records and information manager, it's a role that most people don't ever want to do. And then the fact that I'm in government work is even more boring, which is everybody's like, I don't want to hear about that. Go read statutes, go read, all the laws you have to, just make sure we're in compliance. And it was not my first desire of education. I was in marketing, and then I went for my business degree. So I started working for government just as a need for a job. And I quickly rose through the ranks because I have a highly organizational mind and I
Mhm.
love to tackle projects. And the biggest problem we always have is storage, and that would be of records, and that's paper in the day and microfilm. And I basically started a whole new career path through the work with the clerk of the court. So here in Florida, we have a really awesome open records statute, and the public records request process for open government and transparency of records is something that I take very seriously and I'm really passionate about. Having worked with the clerk of court for a very number of years as their director of record, I went through the archiving situation, the microfilm, the court records, everything. And what we do in government when it comes to records and information and data is everything has a legal retention. Everything has to be retained for a certain period of time. It's always going to be based on fiscal, historical, legal, obviously, and anything that would make that record need to be held forever, like a land record, just as a general information for the audience. So that education in that area, I pushed myself through to become a certified public manager, which was a 2-year course to really run government like a business. It was actually very popular, and our governor at the time really wanted the government staff to take this on and say, hey, how can we run more efficiently? How can we really be more lean? How can we build better processes? But more importantly, how can we also produce great customer service? And I was always the person saying, we've got to be able to do this better. There's got to be a technology out there that can help us, be more efficient. So that's kind of where I really got my start. And I remember buying like the first digital copier, and everybody thought I was crazy. So working for the clerk of court was about 16 years. And then I went over into our county government, which is for here in Florida. It's called the Board of County Commissioners. And that agency is much bigger. Clerks of court and the other constitutional offices are smaller, not all of them, depending on your location. But I work for our local Board of County Commissioners. So that's going to be roads and bridges and engineering and permitting and planning and all of the community services. So it was quite a change, and it was such a great opportunity. But the biggest thing I found was the problem with people's lethargy in wanting to deal with their records and their data, and everything is all about transparency when people need to get their records, what they need. And, that's the idea. You're there to serve. So long story short, if there is actually, if that could actually be for me, which is usually never, I just have a huge career in local government, 28 years. So I'm a certified public manager. I'm a certified records manager. I've taken business process analysis, social media, and email management, and just a variety of additional coursework so that I could help manage and govern the government records that were under my, my responsibility. The other side of that coin is public records requests. And that, for anyone else outside of Florida, would be called FOIA, right? The Freedom of Information Act. Right. So they're both part and parcel. And the idea there is someone can ask for a record that the government has. And if it is collected in that manner, or it is produced, or it's something that the government holds, and it's still available, hasn't met legal retention, hasn't been properly destroyed, then it should be made available. And there's lots of laws around that. So I managed that for 12 years and worked with lots of vendors to try and automate some things, make things easier, faster. Sure. And here's the kicker. Mm-hmm. I was so fast at doing that. I would make sure that people didn't wait. I made it a point to say a public records request is your priority. Your job, your day-to-day bread and butter job, yes, it goes part and parcel with what you have to do, but that public records request is special. And there's a timeline, and it's governed by statute. So we have to be sure that we are, following the rules. And I would get people saying, "Oh my God, we've never had another agency give us the information so quickly. Wow, this is great," And that gave me a great sense of satisfaction as a public servant, because there are those that we've had to deal with, I've had to deal with personally, that were not happy. I've made the paper a few times. And I have a really good story for you as we talk about data management.
Yeah, now, my partner Brenda is working in government position, and she takes her job very seriously, and she's definitely the flagship of her unit. And so thank you for your service and for your duty. Now, Nancy and I have, we've known each other before. We've gone through Peter Sage's Elite Mentorship Forum group and met each other there. And I've been trying to get her on video ever since I met her. I think I was asked you to do a rap video or something.
Yeah.
And since then, Peter introduced us to Kane and Alicia Minkus at Rockstar Industries, and we're learning about AI. And that's what really struck a chord of harmonization with Nancy and I, was the use of AI in our societies and the future, and how people feel about that, their fear of AI, the hopes for AI, and also their understanding. Now, we come from a couple of very different perspectives, don't we, Nancy? And yes, we've had some beautiful conversations about that. Now, working in news for ABC, working as a business analyst, working with the South Koreans as a Tai Chi instructor, working with Peter Sage, basically owning my own newspaper. And since I lost my newspaper, I became an internationally certified health and wellness coach, life and spirit coach. But I've had some very interesting experiences, and that's what people know me as. They call me the spirit guy or whatever. I worked with a lot of psychics, being one myself, but we come from a couple of different perspectives. Your role of AI in the government, I'm sure our audience would love to hear you speak about today. Whereas my role in the AI, I said something to you when we had a conversation earlier. I said that we are not really we're not developing AI. I mean, we're not inventing AI. We're discovering it. And if I was to have a talk with someone else who was in the historical culture or spiritual world, he would understand it if I was to say, that AI has been around for thousands of years, because I have seen things that most people will go to the grave not witnessing. I was that guy who, during the alien abductions, I always raised my hand. Yeah, I'll go to Nome, Alaska. I'll go to the White Mountains of Arizona, one of the highest abductees reported in the United States. I'll go to try to interview him at China Lake, Nevada, at the government complex. Good luck with that, Raphael. But I did talk to a lot of federal agents. So I come from a different perspective. AI has been around for thousands of years, but our cultures, our society has been integrating them probably more so since about the 1940s, as Kane Minkus would say. So we're using it in not our invention of technology, but our discovery of technology that has existed with other cultures, other species, we might say. And so, Nancy, I would like to hear, and I'm sure people would love to hear your perspective on AI in our government. And tell us a little about that, how it's introduced into our government use, and also for the individuals and entrepreneurs themselves, what we can look forward to.
Well, that's a great question. In fact, it's pretty loaded. From my perspective, as a records information manager for my local government body, I worked in the IT department. And my role, my position could have been under legal or administration or IT or its own department. I find it to be auspicious that I was in IT because we were in the middle of a huge migration, moving information from one system to another. Let's just call it, like, if it was for building permits, the old technology that would run that information, we needed to update it and we'd have to transfer it over. And so there's a lot of data cleanup. There's a lot of mistakes from data entry because it was all hand done. Typing in. And so when you get into data entry, most things, there's a high degree of error rate because people are prone to making mistakes. And if a system isn't designed to actually catch those mistakes, then they travel through. Now, here's an interesting perspective. Most people might not know this. When you buy a property here in Florida, you're going to start with the clerk of the court in recording that land document. The information from that will go over to the property appraiser's office to update their records, and then they provide that to the tax collector so that you get your tax bill and you can then pay your taxes on time. But when those properties transact, they have permitting associated with it, so that would increase the value of your home or whatever process that the property appraiser needs to do. Well, if you had a data entered incorrectly at the point of conception at the clerk's office, then it traveled to the property appraiser, traveled to the tax collector, and back around. So after years of looking at poor data cleanup, and it only comes up when you're doing a migration, actually, or by chance when someone is doing a title search and they say, hey, this doesn't match up. This does, that the address is wrong or the name is wrong, and it ties up, say, a purchase process. And I'm using this example because I think a lot of people would understand that as, purchasing a property. And those are 3 different government agencies, technically 4, because the permitting would come from your local permitting office, which is like the Board of County Commissioners. So you can see where an integrated system would eliminate an enormous amount of data error. And now with the new, the GPS, and you have tons of great stuff that's happening with tracking systems. Some people are afraid of that. You would have an enormous amount of comfort knowing that it streamlines so many things in the background. There's so many efficiencies. Services are delivered so much faster. But what does that really mean? It still means that the information has to be managed, classified, cataloged, cleaned up, and retained. So when we get into all of the processes of, hey, I need to replace my my HVAC or my AC unit here in Florida. What do I need to do? Well, I've got to start with a permit. Oh, do you own the property? We have to get, we have to make sure that you own it. So we check with the clerk's office or the property appraiser, and it starts. And then from other integrations, or say an HR process. I want a job. I go into the HR and I have to handwrite an application, and you can't read the handwriting, or they enter a digit wrong or something. And so every process that begins in a paper form has a high probability of data entry errors, and it rolls down the hill, right? So from the IT perspective, I was around to make sure, basically my main role is that you cannot destroy records, any records. And a record is, it's data, it's microfilm, it's paper, it's removable disk drives, it's servers, you name it. The plethora of where data and information is held has to be managed. Okay, so government's role is to be the steward of your information, the people's record. So when we talk about AI, we talk about a great deal of benefit, and it starts slow. So as the records information manager for the county, and the IT director would say, hey, we're losing, or we don't have very much storage left on these servers. There's a lot of old data here, legacy systems, and the legacy system is just an old system of record, that was like, let's just say we were using an old version of Word to create letters to send out to citizens for whatever process the government needed to do. And the secretaries were processing those, but they kept them, they held them, and they never cleaned that up. So you would have lots of legacy information sitting there, and it takes up storage, and storage costs money, and budgets are limited. So when you look at how can we clean up the data, Nancy? I'm like, well, we have to know what the record is. We have to tie it to a record retention, a schedule that says this has to live and available to the public for a certain amount of time. And when it's met legal retention, we have this massive process we go through with checks and balances, and then we can finally legally purge out those records. Now, that is the easiest description I can give you. When you walk into that environment, and it's no different between government or maybe your own home files, or basically the mom and pop or the Walmart. Every piece of information is collected, and they do something with it, and they want to produce it. But from the government perspective, AI, and I was out there going, hey, there's got to be a system out there that can help us read through the data on these file servers, because it's millions and millions of records. And we're a small agency, but we had millions and millions of records and millions of emails. And, you can't look at everything and make these decisions. I mean, you could, it'll take you a lifetime, a career to try, and then it's, growing at an exponential rate. So I asked the question, is there a company out there that, has something that will help us clean up the data? This is 10 years ago. And we actually looked at some, and it was pretty low hanging fruit that they could clean. Well, now what are we talking about? Things are just fast moving. Now, let's just take a moment and say, how can it help produce faster and more efficient government services? That would be, if I need a house permit and it used to take 6 weeks, maybe I'm getting it in a week, maybe even sooner. If I am recording a deed of record and it needs to transfer hands, it used to take maybe a couple of weeks. Now it's almost instantaneous. So there's so many great things. And all I can tell you is, having dug through buildings and basements and attics and storage facilities full of records that are moldy, that are full of bugs, that are all icky, but they still had legal retention. You had to capture that information, put it into a system, and then remove the storage so that that storage could be recapitulated by maybe office space or some other need for it. So AI is in the background with systems, but it's not like the AI that has really been discovered like today, like this year, 2023, with the Chat GPT. I don't want to confuse your audience. I just want to let them know that, again, I'm a small county, But my peers from not only this state, but, nationally, we're all having the same conversation. A professional records manager or anybody in that role is a partner with IT and legal and administration, and we have to follow these rules. If you don't, there's a lot of things that, like you were saying, a whistleblower, yeah, if something's not being done right, it needs to be brought into the light. And that's why we're called the Sunshine State. That the Sunshine Law is what it's called here. And that is that, government is held accountable, and therefore the people can ask those records, and if those records are available. And here's the caveat. The amount of information to search through in a public records request can be enormous, depending on who's asking for the information and the time frame that they give. So if I had a system that to be able to search through all of the different, what I'll call a silo, different areas of where data is stored, then it would make that process so fast. And I'd be able to clean up the old data that, let's say I drafted a letter and that draft needed 3 revisions. And then the original, the final, is sitting over here. That's the one I need to keep by law. The rest of them can all be purged out. We have folks that never purged anything out. So we've got tons and tons and tons of useless data, so there's a lot of, there's a big pro for me when it comes to that process. And then from the IT side, when it comes to data and cataloging, it also hits, gets into your security, and it gets into some other areas that we can definitely chat about.
And that's interesting because if you look at AI being introduced to entrepreneurs and the laymen, and it's really coming out fast these days, there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. So we can use AI to control systems, and it will be totally necessary with the advancement of technology. And I've got a lot of, experience witnessing that. However, we still need to be careful about what data we're putting in. So, for example, interviewing government technology, I became aware that we have a much superior technology that most of the public does not know about. And for example, reverse engineering, I've discovered superior technology. What I've witnessed about reverse engineering is that there's some real glitches in the system because they didn't quite know how to operate it. And so looking at AI could really help our systems. But on the other hand, we really have to be able to be ethical and put in the right data and the right commands and, basically police it. So you had mentioned something about you talking about 10 years ago you were doing this. Didn't you talked about Biden? Tell us about that, about his his orders on the AI introduction.
The executive order, yes. President Biden and his administration honestly have been awesome with taking a forward approach. And the executive order that he signed into law was on October 30th of this year. And it really came about. Obviously, there's been a lot of tech giants, a lot of good leaders in the tech field that have also raised the alarm about, how fast this AI was changing from a real national security side of it and from the ethics side. And I know there's been some congressional hearings. There's been a lot of conversation. And so President Biden's administration did put out, it's about an eight principles. It's a guide. So the order is quite lengthy, but there is a guideline with 8 principles in the priorities. And what's really awesome about that is he does have written in there the ethics of it, the protection of identity, the workforce. Now, if you think about, and I'm slightly paraphrasing because I haven't really read the depth of it because it is pretty deep. But the bullet points, one of the president's concerns had to do with jobs. right? Jobs where people, could they lose jobs? Would AI, eliminate so many of these jobs, and blue collar workers and sort of thing. And we've seen automation and machines in the manufacturing industry, right? And that the bottom line of business is profit. They want to be efficient. They want to run those things efficiency. And so it really strikes at the heart of a person's, ability to work and hold a job. And let's say they're not, certainly educated or have the means to move forward with that. That's just the way it is. However, in that order, he has written into the fact that there has to be training. We have to look out for the American worker. We have to understand that this technology is to be used, and it's also to be managed, and it's also to be carefully, used to protect people's rights. And I thought that was fascinating. The other thing is, normally in any government work, it is run by we have the statutes, you have the administrative code, you have other things that feed into how we protect people's records, how we protect their identity. And of course, everybody's familiar with the cybersecurity issues that have been happening, identity theft,
yeah,
and phishing, phishing campaigns. And so with the cybersecurity issues that have come up, it's a huge issue for local governments and all government agencies, because that phishing attack that can come through an email, and an unsuspected employee might click on a link, and then it affects that system, and then it can shut down a government branch, a local government, and then then there's ransomware, and you're held to ransom. So what's interesting about all of that when it comes to AI, are there ways to help protect those things? I'm sure there are. The thing that the audience should really take away is not every government agency is equipped financially to put into place systems that will protect them even more. They have a high level of requirement in the IT world to protect the data systems, the firewalls, your two-factor authentications when you're logging into a system, so that the citizens, when they're coming in to do a commerce with the government, whatever that might be, they're asked, okay, you could log in and you could use your credit card, and you could, instead of walking into the office, they have to have a level of trust that information is going to be held securely and not have a breach and, a possible identity theft situation. So you talk about layers of responsibility in these areas, because that hits every department, and then it comes right back to, if I'm your records and information manager, what have we done to protect that? And if we don't have that conversation, we can't have the right policies written, we can't have the right procedures in place. So with the executive order from the Biden administration, that's the start, right? And then in there, every federal agency is required to then have these standards and procedures put in place. The Department of Defense actually has one of the strongest security sides when it comes to technology.
Sure, why not?
Right. Well, some of the software vendors that I would look at for records management and managing these, data stores, they would come back with a certification from DoD, which was top notch. You could look at Gartner reports, and so everybody in the field of government would look at these standards and say, well, that might be top notch, but we're a small agency, we can't afford it. What can we afford? What can we do to support and protect the information that we hold? Because we do hold a lot of personal identifying information. If it's a medical issue, the hospitals, all the health information. So all of these pieces kind of flow in and out to where AI can definitely help. From a business perspective, wow, what a game changer. Coming out of government work after 28 years and wanting to be, my own entrepreneur, and that's why we're, talking, because we're in the same class. I see the great opportunities, and I also understand the frustration. From the ethics side of it, I can write in a chat GPT, and create a prompt that gives me something that's just magnificent. I didn't write that magnificent piece, but I could certainly, you know, post it as my own, right? And I think that's where we get into the ethics side. As far as, are you really going to, you're not, there's that slippery slope of plagiarism versus, are you writing something that's, at your level of writing, but you use the AI technology to make it better, and
In
next thing you
service
know,
to
it's,
others.
yes. Now, from the training side, I will say this, having written training and delivered training, wow, it takes a lot of time to develop a training and then to put it out there. So if I take my old training slides and I can then use the AI technology to update those slides and be more engaging, maybe more succinct so that people are, because you've got like this small window of time and you want to make sure that your staff are being trained and that they get it. And then you can measure the analytical side of how many people took the class. Let's give them a little test, ... right? And so there is a great deal of benefit that can definitely be done. But from data storage, number one, clean up the redundancy data, clean up the old file shares, save money, be better protected, and gosh, talk about a stress relief. Big stress release. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. There, you've covered about all the fears that people have for AI, and also all the hopes that they have for AI. Now, there's three groups of people. There's those who fear it and who have spoken out against it every time I bring it up, in my peer groups. And then most of them, entrepreneurs, have a lot of hopes to them. But all of us have some, bifurcation there. We have some fears about the integration, and also hopes for the future and for our practical applications. Yeah, I've got a good buddy, for example, Terry. He runs a company. He manages a company that installs automated systems in factories. Okay, so he puts in robotic systems, and those people, they've had a lot of trouble in some of the countries where they've even, rioted because they thought they were losing their jobs. But guess what? They were put to work elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them even got transferred from manual labor to more using their brain. And so they had to give them gym memberships, okay, to keep them healthy. So, I mean, my point is things are changing, and
Mm-hmm.
things are going to change. And it's not our job as Earth citizens, people on this planet that have come here and we play these roles to judge our experience, or even especially try to control it. We I think would put a big smile on our face, everybody on this earth, if we let go, as Peter Sage puts it, not control, but the need for control. People come up to me. I literally the other day I had this guy come up to me. He was operating some booth at a market, and I know the guy. He owns a mountain across the fields next to me, and he says, I just met him, and he says, Raphael, he goes, do you do, and he mentioned some psychotropic drug, which doesn't come to mind right now. He goes, you always seem so happy, and you're out here dancing in public. He goes, he goes, have you ever tried that? I go, no, we don't need drugs to do happy. I don't even drink coffee. I drink alkaline water from our well here at the farm. Okay. We don't need David Hawkins might, object to that. He's kind of into the psychotropic uses and the discoveries that he's gotten from them. However, to put a smile on her face, I think, is to accept that we are not in control and things will change. And we have to change. Don't you agree? Nancy, for example, we need to protect our environment more. The growth in population has had its unending effect on our home and our children's home. And as an Earth citizen, I'm concerned about that. And I can see how the use of AI is necessary in the growth as we discover a higher technology. Now, like I said, I've witnessed much higher technology that we do have control of, Russia, America. I don't want to disappear, so I'm not going to talk specifics like some of people I've known have disappeared. However, this is going to be an integrated part of our future, and it's happening very fast. Just today, right? King Minkus was talking about just today how new AI was released on some of the chat and Bard and whatnot. And so can you, what are your thoughts about that, though, the holistic concept of integrating this new technology, how it's necessary, but we must be the guardians?
Wow, beautiful. Thank you for the background. That was some more information that I didn't know about your experiences. Boy, what a wonderful person to get to know. I really get
It's been
excited.
fun.
Yes. The integration process, I want to touch base on the fear prospect, because anytime we've changed technology, and I'll use a simple thing as, like telephones to cell phones, and then you get into the phone tree and you're like lost, like, I just want to talk to a person. I just want to talk to a person. And you're so annoyed, but you see the efficiency on the backside. If you've ever been in a business, well, obviously you have, but if you've been in government and you're like, people are like, oh, I've got 40 phone calls to return. I can't get to my day-to-day work. Oh, let's put in this new phone automated system. Well, then the customer goes, oh gosh, this is driving me crazy. So, but once they got used to it, then it was like, okay, we're going to be able to, get our frequently asked questions out of the way. We can go to this website and click on the form and issue it ourselves, which is all data driven in the background. And we can do these things, and it's so more efficient. And hey, I can be in the car on my phone, and I could issue a permit, or something to that effect. Integrating people, helping people get past their fear is probably the biggest thing in any situation. No, you could, you have a list of it. And maybe it's because some of our movies have been really like, AI is going to take over the world or whatever. And I look at this as saying, I can choose to either be fearful or loving, right? The two things. I'm either going to react in fear or in love. And if I have the fear, if I have the fear, I'm going to spiral down into all the crappy crap. And then it's going to change my vibration. It's going to make me feel negative. It's going to change everything that happens around me. And if I'm a change leader, if I'm a champion of this work, of any work, my biggest point is, how can I help you? How can I help you use the technology? How can I help you get past your fear? How can I help you learn to trust better, or to trust a little bit? Still ask the questions by all means, but don't worry so much. There are great people in place that are there to help get this right. And I got to say, I've worked with some of the best, most ethical, and these guys don't ever sleep because they're worried that something's not going to work or it's going to break. And who would, from the government side, the IT side, and they are just putting in hours and hours, and you go, wow, thank you. They are the unsung heroes in the background. I am very proud, and I'm very pleased with how industry leaders have stepped up to say some things. Love them, hate them, I don't care. The point is that they have to speak truth to power, and you have to say, this is either going to work or not. We need some stop gaps if it were. But for the general public, if you are fearful, you have to step back and go, how does this really affect me? My bank is putting things in place, right? I have to trust that. I know it could be a whole nother conversation, but I'm not going there. What I'm saying is, we do trust that paycheck is being direct deposited, that my electric is going to be automatically pulled, my bill is going to be paid that way. I've gotten so happy. Listen, I was like not that person that would do that. And I was in that field to get everybody to do it. And I was like, I really gotta, take my own medicine and start doing this. I have to trust the system. There are so many safeguards in place to protect that. AI, again, I can't speak to it 100%. I can just say that every technology change that I have witnessed in my 28 years, I know that's kind of a newbie to some people, but I've been able to see this transition from microfilm to digital to the integrative systems and how fast that technology changes. It makes those vendors who are selling those programs and platforms, man, they are out there trying to hustle and get that even figured out more, because once they sell a system to a business or a government, they've got to, it's a relationship. They've got to be able to make sure their customers are not fearful. How do we get through that? So it's training, it's understanding, and it's hand holding and champions that can sit there and say it's okay. But change management is probably one of the biggest areas that is unaddressed. So from a training perspective,
Right.
that's what I would do. But I would say, and I think one of the questions you had asked me earlier was, how is the government working to build in training and development to make sure that the person, the staff, the people who are doing this work will be up to speed, will be able to actually, one, use it or understand it, or develop it, however that is, because this is not a silo. You might be able to give me a platform and a system that could solve all the problems that my agency needs. But if I don't have staff that understand that or can integrate into that change,
And
then
manage it.
it doesn't matter, right? And so we're back to the same thing. How can we make this work to solve the problems, to improve our healthcare system, to improve the ecology? I mean, you talk about one of the biggest things with in government, the EPA, and trying to govern the safeguarding our environment, our air quality, our water quality, where things can be mined, where things can't. That's a government run business. And let me tell you, staff that work in these agencies, they're not high paid professionals. We're like some of the lowest paid people, but we have such a high degree of integrity. And yet once you have, the directive to act or to move, or this is what you need to do, and that directive comes down the chain, right? So if the President Biden's AI policy and that executive order has a great deal of promise, it has a great deal of safeguarding, and then all you can do is you have to work in a team. We're not alone, right? This is collective, and collectively the citizens, the elected officials, the business developers, the people all along the chain, the supply chain, everybody working together to make this actually be good and to help us, because we are at this stage of evolution. And like I say, Raphael, honestly, I'm probably one of the rare ones, because I really spend a lot of time in personal development and in professional development.
Yes, you have.
Try and get a handle and kind of drive my agency. And I'm one of the few, but there are a lot of people in my field that as we get to that place of retirement, they kind of drop off. And really the thing is how do you prepare staff and the newer generations to look at all of this information and data, and how you can actually, again, what is our role? To provide services and to get the information to the people when they need it, and to be able to use data to extract value so that we can actually be more efficient or do the services that the people actually want. How frustrating is it when you have a public meeting and people are taking their time to come to that public meeting to speak to their public officials and to voice their concerns over, a lot of times it's an environmental issue. It might be an animal control issue, save more of our pets. We just don't want everything to be, just don't euthanize thousands of our pets. What can we do better? How can we deliver those meals to wheels better? How can we get some funding for, domestic violence situations? I mean, it goes on and on. And if you get this and you get to say, oh, how many times has this come up? How many times over the last 3 years have we had citizens come up and ask about this issue? and where is it going and how has it been followed up? I mean, this is the kind of value that data extraction from an AI system could actually help, because who wants to just keep talking to a wall? Like that's how people feel, that they aren't being heard by their elected officials. I mean, in a sense, right? And and I bring that forward because as the public records manager and helping people for 12 years get the records they need, trying to explain to them why it's not available to them. Well, there's a government's supposed to keep everything that we give them. I'm like, well, yeah, we can't, because there's a retention schedule. But there was compassion to explain the situation so that that person on the other end of the phone understood that they weren't being not given the information for a reason. Like, yeah, we have it, but we're not going to give it to you. They weren't being stonewalled. They were being, just told, hey, this is how the process works. And so it gets back down to fear, and it gets back to saying, take the time, help people understand. Now people will do and make their decisions as they need to, and that's everybody's right. And everybody gets an opinion. And all I ask is that when it comes to working with your local government or any branch of government, remember there's another person on that other side that
Right,
is
right,
equally like, okay, this is the rule and I have to follow it. But when, if someone says, oh my God, you guys have implemented an AI system and it's going to be the death of us, or, don't use 5G because, my ear is going to fall off, and, please
right.
don't put up the towers. I mean, there's so much that goes on, and yet you need people to speak up. You have to. This is a two-way street, right?
Yeah,
Government
and
can't
there's
do without
there's
it.
really endless conversations here. I mean,
Oh, I
especially the
apologize.
ones.
Yeah, I could go on. I
No, I
apologize
mean,
if I
you
missed the
you
mark.
you covered a lot of ground, and there's a lot of ground to be covered. Even the one where you talk about appeasing the people, let them know they're not being ignored, they're being dealt with the best they can, which um, everybody out there needs to know when you're on that phone and I'm thinking sometimes, no, I don't want you to take the next 5 minutes speaking in an accent telling me why you can't help me, right?
Yes.
But you mentioned something, integrating those systems, individuals working together. You talk about the collective. This is a collective effort. And, you rolled right into that, and that was beautiful, because that's so important. I would love people to expand their minds, expand their peer groups, but really open their minds to the collective awareness. Um, my job on this side, I see more growingly, is to show people that I've had a gift ever since I was a small child. I could see people's spirits. I'm psychic. I've learned to keep my mouth shut. My wife introduced me to somebody. I start babbling about things I have no way of knowing about. It just goes right through me. But I want people to be open-minded, because when you think of working collectively, we think about, let's let go of the fact that you're waving your flag and you're in this country, because there's people all over this planet. I consider myself an Earth citizen. And if we work collectively, we're going to, the drill, two minds are better than one, three are better than two, and so on. So we can learn. But not only that, but what I've seen on my end was a much larger collective. For example, if I think about superior technology, and people have got me on their radio shows and say, well, Raphael, what did you see out of those helicopter cams? And I don't tell them what I saw, but what I tell them is what I saw is that we have much higher technology than most people are even aware of. And yes, oh, by the way, I threw my TV out the window in 2006 before that movie came out, I think. I'm not sure. And I called the studio and I said, I can no longer do this. But anyway, what I saw was these different technologies from different cultures, different societies, different species, if you will, that had nothing to do with each other. They were totally different technologies. I'm seeing some of them being reversed engineered, integrated. I've worked with some federal agent friends on who have verified, um, just like, Tom Campbell verifies quantum mechanics, gives me some validation. Well, I live in the quantum field, right?
Right.
I don't live just in the 3D world of the United States and or Czechoslovakia or Russia or whoever we happen to be interviewing. But to open our mind to the collective, there's only one way we can do that, is like you said, with
Yeah.
love, and
Mhm.
to be open and to be loving. And wow, you brought up a great point, is change management. We have to change because otherwise, the earth in a million years is going to go, what happened to those little things that are running around cropping everywhere? So tell me about change management in your experience in the future. What is your message
Oh,
to the people?
wow. You're such a good, you ask such good questions. Um, Gosh, yeah, I'm going to try and answer it by giving you an example.
Okay.
Um, Before I left my government job in February, um, I had been invited to be another guest speaker for the Orlando ARMA chapter. And I said, I don't really want to talk about what we always talk about, right? Every year it's the same thing. We have the problem, the technology's there, but we don't have the budget, and then they're all like, well, happy hour starts in 5, right? And you're like, I'm not doing that. I
Okay.
tell you what I will do, because I was going through the Peter Sage work, and I'd gone through module 1, right?
Okay.
Ruling reality. Holy cow, what it did, even as a
Yes.
28-year government employee and somebody who's always been by the book and really strict, and I was in a very strict religious
I'll
mindset
bet
for a
that
really
was
long
mind
time.
blowing for you.
It was wonderful, but I understood it. It was interesting. I could make a shift. But the second one, on module 2, where we're talking about learning genius, right?
Right.
And the myelin and how these things come about, where you get into unconscious incompetence and conscious competence, and
Hmm.
you go through that process. And so I told him, I said, listen, I don't want to talk about just anything. I want to talk about how you can get your people to get out of their own way, meaning they're already afraid that the job is too big, that the technology is moving so fast that they can't keep up. And basically I said, I will talk about how to lose your fear, how to make your mind shift, how to actually
Mm.
embrace these things so that you can make those pieces happen. And they said, okay. I said, because all you have to lose is your fear. That's what I wrote. I'm like, come with an open mind. All you have to lose is your fear. And
Wow.
my message to them was, I mean, we were talking about so many things. I would ask the audience, has anybody, seen this study? Have you seen this study? Have you ever seen the water crystals change when you tell them the love vibration versus a hateful vibration, and
Mhm.
everybody was like mesmerized, like, no, I've never seen any of this before. So what does that do? That plants seeds. It gets the information out. And when you talk about change management and the future forward, our job here is to pass the baton. And we have an opportunity, awesome opportunity to be able to pass it with the most enthusiasm and excitement,
Oh, thank
because
you.
Raphael, if you walk into the workplace and you're like, oh, another day, la, la, la. And, you can either set the tone as like, man, this is awesome. Look what we get to do today. We have got this opportunity. We've got all these new employees coming on board that have never seen this crap, and they're going to freak out and walk out the door if they see a room full of records. But if you get them on a computer and a system that's moving like this, that they can go because their brains are already moving so fast, you have this whole beautiful field of I call them flowers. This is your nurturing garden. These are people that you get to not only embrace in the new technology and the service to others, right? But you also get to say government work is valuable, hospital work, first
Mhm.
responders, everybody all along, everybody's got a part to play. So for me, it's absolutely taking folks that have got a responsibility, and I believe that should be, honestly, if it was my my way, which I can't control everything. But if I could, I would make change management and positive thinking and lift your vibration, techniques part of part of their daily routine because of the amount of stress involved. But I see a beautiful future. I see, as I choose to see it. I choose to see the beauty of humanity. I choose to see the awesomeness of the technology. And I know there's this balance. I know it's going to feel like, oh my God, the world is ending type of thing versus let's tip it back, And the only way we do that is consciously, right? We can project that out. But again, if you choose to see the negative, you're going to find it. If you choose to see the positive, you're going to find it. And maybe I answered your question, maybe I didn't, but that's the only way I know how to answer it because that's where I live. And I left my government job. I'll just tell your audience, I left my government job because I had been doing the records information management and the public records, which were two really strong pillars by myself. I had no support staff. So I never had budgeted help. I never had a budget I could do anything with. So I had to be very creative in using resources that would get the job done and stay in compliance. And every year it was the same thing. Oh yeah, well, thanks for everything. Your statistics are great and everybody loves you. And, the citizens are really happy, but yeah, no money for an assistant. I told him, I said, I have to start transferring my knowledge. What I know is not something they're going to pick up, be able to do. This is part of, succession training, right? Succession planning. And it didn't happen. So this year, and seriously, it really had a lot to do with opening my mind, going through Peter Sage's training, because I finished my program in January. In January, I had the epiphany. I truly did. I'm like, this is no more. I'm not giving another body part, ruin another shoulder or back, whatever, from doing the work by myself. I'm going to go ahead. My husband and I are going to, go live our dream. We're going to do something different. And I literally gave him a 1 week notice, which in my position, I was kind of required to give like several months. But I'm like, no, because nobody's planned for this. If I didn't show up today, for whatever reason, you would
And
still
you
be
knew
the
it
same.
was your choice.
It was my
That's
choice this
huge.
time. And I wasn't angry. Years before, like the year before, I was so angry because I'm like, how do you expect us to do quality service, customer service, if you don't value me enough to give me staffing, right? Oh, it's
Wow.
always the budget. And so I had to make a decision. And the decision was I needed to find a way that I could grow. And in that time, that's when the Peter Sage, stuff had come to me. I studied Tony Robbins. I've done a lot of other, Proctor
Right.
Bob Proctor,
Mhm.
lots of different ones. But all of a sudden, it made sense. But those modules shifted my mindset, shifted my vibration, and I stopped being angry, and I stopped playing victim. Like, oh, poor me, I've got to do all this work. I'm like, no, I have a job, and my job today is that I'm here to serve and that it's up to me how much I take on. It's up to me how much stress I allow to hurt my body. It's up to me how I decide to leave the situation, but I'm going to leave it with integrity. And that's my message to everybody is,
Right.
you stay angry, you only hurt yourself. That was a hard lesson for me, Raphael, and I'm so grateful that I learned it and that and that I supported the person coming on behind me who had zero training or credential, but I saw promise in her by working with her during the years. And I said, you know what, if you guys aren't going to go out to post this position and find a professional to my standard and you want to do internal, here's some people that would work. But this one, she's got promise. She has the raw skill sets. And she's got the intuition. So yeah, she got
Good
promoted
news.
up. Yeah, and on occasion I've called in to do something and she goes, "Were your ears ringing?" I'm like, "No, why?" She goes, "Oh, Nancy, I need help with this." And I just talk her through it, And some people would say, "Oh, how could you do that? You're not getting paid or something." I'm like, "No, it's my heart, And again, why would I want someone to fail? Right? Because she's trying to do a service for the people. And that is just my core value. And I just, if I can't speak to my integrity in any
Yes.
situation, then I'm not being authentic to myself. And yeah, so I believe we have a role to be able to pass a baton that gives hope, and it gives enthusiasm, it gives integrity, and it's full of promise, and it's full of, you can do this too. This is not a mystery. It's just believe in yourself and believe in those that you work with. That's how I am.
And care, that's beautiful. My wife works a government regulated position, and she comes home and she's very unusual. She is the flagship of her office, and she comes home and she says, she looks out over her property, over fields and the horses, and she says, I love my job. I love my life. It's so nice to see that. So I like that change management and succession training as our role, our job, for whatever we can do in service. Now, remember Albert Einstein had that saying, the most important question we can ask ourselves is, do we live in a friendly or an unfriendly universe?
Mhm.
That's a whole podcast right there.
It is, yes,
That
yes.
means is, are you living in fear, or are you living in love? Are you
Mhm.
trusting the process, letting go of control, acceptance, not judging your experience, but being the best that you can be
Mhm.
the change you want to see, as they
Yes,
say, right?
yes,
Thank
yes.
you, Nancy. I would
Mhm.
love to see you again here. Now, you can get a hold of me at windhorsetransformation.com as soon as we get that website back up. And you can look at this on YouTube on It's Time for You to Change Your Life, which is what a spirit told me personally once, appeared in my yoga room. It's time for you to change your life. We have to do the work. But how can people get a hold of you, Nancy?
Oh, wow. Yeah, my email address, Nancy Jo Kinch. My middle name is Joe, J-O. It's not short for Josephine or anything else.
Like my
It's
mother. Okay.
Yeah, like your mom. Yeah, I love it. So Nancy Jo Kinch at gmail.com. I have been the reluctant entrepreneur that I do have an LLC. It's called Little Ram Enterprises, and I was going to start my records and information management consulting business. And it's so funny, Raphael, that the longer I'm away from government work, the more I realize I'm not sure I want to do that anymore. And yet,
Right.
your your invitation to speak on these topics, as you can see, I have a great deal of passion for the
Yes.
industry.
And focus.
And I really love the fact that I can help people. So I'm on my spiritual journey, if you will, on the entrepreneurial side. In other words, there's a lot of things that are really important to me, and mostly it's got to be helping people find their happiness. And what does that mean? I don't know. But when it comes to document management, records management, change management, it's always the same. There's a process, it begins, it ends, and you help people through it. Technology will help you as well. And there's lots of great vendors out there. But if I can help anybody understand that, whether it's a private business or another government agency, it's really probably something I'm a little bit um, how would I say, shy, because sometimes I'm not as enthusiastic about doing that work because I have that notion in the background how government can be so negative. But I just have to focus on the
Because it's made
positive.
of people. It's like Rumi
Yes.
says, the crowd is an illusion. The crowd is made of individuals. There are very high integrity
Yes.
people and there are low integrity people. It has nothing to do with your position. It has to do with the individuals. Nancy, I see you as the future spokesperson for change management and succession training and entrepreneurship around the world. I can't wait to talk to you again.
Well, I so appreciate you and your audience, and I hope that there's been some value in there. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but I am grateful, I am humbled, and I'm honored to be on your channel. So thank you so much for inviting me again.
And thank you. And we're going to put some information about Nancy below. I think it'll be below. AI might change that, but we'll have some contact info, and so we can follow you and see where you're going with this change management succession training spokesperson. Yeah, you're going to be the next prime minister. I love it. Okay, thank you, and I'll talk to you again, my dear.
Thank you,
And
Raphael.
I'll see you in class.
Yes, sir, you will. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And leave your comments below what you would like to have Nancy answer next, if that's okay.
That
Put those
sounds great.
questions down below. All right, dear, you have a
Thank you.
beautiful Florida evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.